So moving on, I'll now pass you over to Michelle and she will take you through the agenda for today's session, Managing Mental Health in the Workplace. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you everyone for joining the call. This is a really important topic to us here at Moorepay for our own business and for the businesses that we support. And it's particularly nice to be able to do this in Mental Health Awareness Week. Obviously, mental health and managing this at work is a huge topic, and we only have a short amount of time in this webinar today. But what I've tried to do is just pull out some of the key areas that you might want to consider and then leave you with some thoughts and potential actions that you can take away from today. The sorts of things that I want to run through with you are talking about key statistics behind mental health and therefore what drives it is a really key topic in industry at the moment. A little bit of background about legal obligations, talking about the types of mental health conditions that your employees may face, and then talking about signs of good mental health and how to help you recognise potential signs of distress or poor mental health within your employees. A small part talking specifically about work-related mental health problems, and then moving on to talking about how you can promote positive mental health within your businesses, and then finishing off with how you can then support employees who are experiencing mental health problems. I think one of the key things to say is that we recognise how big a topic this is at the moment. As I said, we look at this within our own organisation, or the businesses that we support, which tend to sit in the small and medium sized businesses. It can be an absolute minefield for those type of businesses. Every second or third article on LinkedIn will be usually talking about mental health awareness. There are countless tools and resources out there at your disposal to help you, one, promote positive mental health within your organisation, but to deal with it when it actually happens and react to a situation. But the message that we get from our customers that it can be quite difficult to navigate around all this, and it's hard to know what the best approach to take is. So hopefully this webinar will give you a snapshot of that and make you feel a bit more confident in dealing with these issues, which in my opinion can sometimes be much more disruptive and difficult for a small and medium business where the resources are smaller and therefore can have a larger impact than a large organisation where work can be swallowed up by other people. So to start with then, I'd like to put some kind of background to this and just go through some general key statistics behind mental health. Now these have been pulled from various sources, but I think they give a real good basis to understand the size of the problem. Around 13% of all sickness absence is believed to be attributed to mental health issues. And I think it's clear that although we have this statistic, this has a potential to be higher because some people, our employees, may be recording their sickness for another reason because they don't want to admit they have a mental health problem. Around 15% of people at work have symptoms of an existing mental health condition. So we've got to remember this isn't just about people going off absent with mental health issues, it's people who continue to work while suffering with a mental health condition. In 2017-18, stress, depression and anxiety actually accounted for over 44% of work-related ill health, and it's understood that 1 in 3 GP fit notes will be for some form of mental health problem. It's estimated that almost 300,000 people with long-term mental health issues lose their jobs each year, and this can be for a variety of reasons, whether they've gone through a medical capability, whether they have not been quite as open and honest with their employer in terms of what their issue is, and they might have tripped some kind of short-term absence trigger, or whether they've decided to leave their jobs themselves. But that's a huge proportion of people. But more importantly then is that it's kind of the last two stats. It's estimated that 15.8 million working days were lost in 17-18 due to mental health issues. And quite startlingly, the annual cost to businesses, there's been a number of different research put out on this, but between all the different research, we're kind of estimating between 33 billion and 42 billion that it has cost UK industry in a year. It is actually now the single largest cause of a disability and accounts for around 22.8% of all disabilities. And if you look at the wider economic cost, that 33 billion can rise to over 100 billion in terms of the impact that it has. Legal obligations. It's important that all businesses understand their legal obligations in terms of all employment law, but to kind of put the context around it for mental health is extremely important. I understand that it can feel like a minefield, but businesses need to know what the guiding principles are. Businesses are legally obliged to manage mental health at work through 3 different acts. The first one is the Health and Safety at Work Act, which puts the onus on employers to provide a safe working environment and to care for the well-being of employees. The Management of Health and Safety Regulations introduce risk assessments, including a health risk assessment tool, which is very key to managing it. And then the Equality Act, which has been around for some years but updated in 2010, brings in that protection for disabled employees so that they are not treated differently because of their disability. And someone with a mental health condition that falls into the category of affecting their day-to-day life over the course of 12 months or more, that would mean their mental health condition would likely be classed as a disability. And it's very important to recognise that. The flip side of this, though, is understanding that when stress is managed and mental health conditions are managed within a business, then morale is good. And this means that things like productivity flourish, so does timekeeping, attendance, relationship with colleagues. It can really change the culture and the feel of the organisation. So as well as reacting when an issue does happen with mental health, trying to proactively prevent things or support in advance colleagues who do experience mental health can really have a positive impact on your business. So this means it's a real strong business case for managing mental health at work. To go into a bit more detail then about the types of things that you may face, mental health is a real wide-ranging catch-all heading to something that is a bit more complex. It's important to remember though during this that even though there's an obligation on you as a business owner, a manager or within HR to help manage mental health conditions, there's certainly no expectations that you would suddenly become a medical expert in these areas. It's about understanding the basic principles and then knowing where and when to go for support to help you further. But to give you an overview of the types of health conditions that come under mental health, first of all is depression. And sufferers from severe depression often refer to it as the black dog. There's a lot of information that is out there on the internet about what is called the black dog. And Winston Churchill is the person who's said to have popularised this phrase to describe bouts of depression where he suffered through his life. And there's some really good material out there giving an insight to what it's like to live with the black dog as a companion, as it's put. Anxiety. Anxiety is something that we can probably all relate to in its basic form. Almost everyone will get anxious about something at some time, whether it's a work deadline, whether it's something at home, whether it's you've got children who are going through GCSEs or SATs this week, you will see that they are suffering from some level of anxiety, and that generally can be normal. And in some circumstances, that anxiety or butterfly feeling can actually propel you to do well. However, most of us will find it easier to cope with that anxiety and keep it under control and keep it at bay. But there are people who will get so anxious about something that they find that they just actually can't do something and will go out of their way to avoid it. You know, think about someone with agoraphobia, how difficult it is for them to even step foot outside their house. And that's the type of anxiety and panic attacks we would talk about that would impact people at work from doing their job to their normal ability. Phobias is something that is talked about sometimes in a jokey way, but this can be really serious for people. There's a wide range of phobias and it affects people in different ways, but if you move to the severe end of that irrational extreme phobia for a particular thing, that somebody avoids it. Even common fears of things that you have to face all the time. So you think about something like spiders. If you are someone at the extreme end of a phobia who's dealing with spiders and you might be working in an old building, that might be something that is constantly at the back of their mind and a reality that they may have to face on a regular basis. And it's thinking about that and how do you help them overcome it. Obsessive compulsive disorder, most people will have OCD to an extent at some point, whether you like to have the tins in your cupboard facing the right way or all your towels matching in your bathroom. But someone with severe OCD would have a completely different reaction to that, whether it's having to wash their hands a certain number of times or the reaction they would have to the tins not being faced in the right way. And that can propel itself into work. These sorts of things are not just confined to home. And with all these things, post-traumatic stress disorder is the other one, and this will be triggered after a particular event. It's something that you see quite common from people who've been in the army and who've been on a deployment, and then they come to work in a normal office environment. That can be quite difficult to deal with. All these things, the symptoms can range from quite mild to very severe, and it's once you're knocking towards that very severe that it will start to impact work. There are other less common conditions, but still worth being aware of. Schizophrenia is a very severe mental health condition where people cannot differentiate between what is real and what is unreal, and it will result in things like hallucinations and delusions. And then bipolar disorder. This used to be referred to as manic depression, but as we've grown to know more about the condition, it's been categorised as bipolar. But this will cause extreme mood swings, which range from extreme highs to extreme lows. These conditions are the types that have a much bigger impact on people's lives. Although often with treatment, many people can manage these, and it's understanding what these issues are, how they may impact at work, and how you as a business can help to manage them. In general then, talking about good mental health, I really like this quote, which is from the World Health Organization, and it says, "A state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community." So although this is talking about sense of well-being and good mental health and positive mental health in a wider sense, I think it's also something that's transferable, and it's getting you to think about what you can do in your own organisation to help promote this type of environment. Moving on then to just give you some tips around what to look for and to help you really kind of get a bit of a temperature test of where your organisation is. Some signs of what good mental health at work will look like. You will see people who are feeling in a good mental health state at work, being present, focused and approachable, being engaged, motivated, productive, being able to negotiate their workloads and meet deadlines, and not being afraid to say, look, actually I've got quite a lot on this week, can this be pushed back? Giving and receiving feedback will be much easier when people are in a good mental health state. They will be able to take praise, criticism, and in a constructive way, but also give it back. People will generally have things like good attendance and punctuality, keeping problems in perspective, responding rather than reacting, but they will also know when they need to ask for support, and they will actually ask for it rather than taking it into themselves to deal with. You'll also see people taking their breaks, their annual leave, working the correct hours, and just generally having productive relationships with colleagues, and the organisation will feel different. But these are some good tips just to take away, to look around your organisation and start to think, do I see these things within my own business? Moving on though to potential signs of distress. It isn't as straightforward as there is one thing that you look for. There are different categories of things, and then under those categories there are different signs to look for. So I've just pulled out a few, again, just to give you really the kind of top level understanding of it. In terms of looking for a sign of distress or someone who is suffering with poor mental health, some of the physical signs are the ones listed to below. You may find things like people are more fatigued. It may come out in a more physical sense of indigestion, upset stomach, feeling sick, headaches. There may be appetite or weight changes, pain in joints and backs, changes in sleep pattern, which will add to the fatigue or the way they are when they are in work. You sometimes can see visible tension in trembling or the way that the individual holds themselves. It may manifest it in chest or throat pains, for example, or there may be extremes of feeling the temperature, whether it's sweating or constantly feeling cold. I think over my time as a HR operational professional, which has been for a number of years now, that was one of the biggest lessons I learned about dealing with mental health issues in work. And even back in a time when it wasn't as widely recognised and talked about as it is now, is witnessing employees have physical reactions to their mental health. I've had someone describe it to me as they felt like they literally had the flu and could not get out of bed. That's how it manifests themselves. And I think it's important to recognise that it isn't just a state of mind for someone, it can actually manifest itself in a physical symptom. And it's important to know that. Moving on then to psychological signs of someone in distress or with poor mental health, things like mood changes, being anxious beyond the normal anxiety, showing distress, tearfulness, indecision, within work a lack of motivation, being distracted or confused. They may find it difficult to take information in or have a lapse in memory. And it may get to the thing where they have an illogical or irrational thought process. And they may respond to experiences or sensations to which other people haven't picked up on, other people who are in good mental health positions haven't necessarily picked up on. And then the most extreme side of that is having suicidal thoughts and verbalising those suicidal thoughts. Thinking then about causes of mental health problems in work and the types of things that may cause people who have either suffered with mental health in the past and exacerbate it, or who haven't before and it's work that brings it on. The types of things that may cause work-related mental health problems are things like high-pressure environment, having a poor working environment in terms of space, light, heat, noise, facilities. Now, obviously, there's the extreme where you think of a company like Google, where their offices are all open, they have the breakout areas, and it's all about the environment. That can contribute to good or potentially poor mental health, but it isn't the only contributing factor, and it's important to remember this when I'm going through them. It's not one of these things, it can be one or two or a combination of them all. Other things become the types of unmanageable workloads, unrealistic deadlines, potentially lack of control over their work, negative relationships. Never underestimate the power that relationships between colleagues, managers, peers have in promoting good or poor mental health. A lot of the time it is the people that we work with, and it's businesses understanding and seeing what those relationships are like and being able to react when there potentially is a problematic relationship. It may be the things like poor communication, poor management support. How will business managers change? All our businesses will be going through change at different times and in different ways, but how that change process is managed can really underpin how the mental health response to that is. You may have roles that are high risk, unclear, or a clash of responsibilities. Businesses that advocate long hours with no breaks, maybe job insecurity. And then one that I find particularly important is lone working. Whether that's you've got somebody who's home-based and doesn't come into the office, they can often feel isolated, and how do they feel part of the team? Or jobs that involve people spending long periods of time on their own away from the business. And these are kind of all just things to think about, and think about any of these that you may have in your business or don't have. Just really spot checks for you to kind of look around at your own organisation. Moving on then to how you can, first of all, promote positive mental health, and second of all, how you can support employees. So we've talked about some of the signs that you can look for, and now it's important to talk about what you can actually do about it. Again, I am just giving you a snapshot in this short period of time, but hopefully things you can take away. So the first one is talking about promoting a positive mental health environment within your own business. I think it's really important to use management styles that allow your employees to be autonomous while ensuring that they feel supported. It's giving them a sense of pride and control over their work, but ensuring that you sit in the background to support them. That can be really key to helping promote a positive mental health environment in work. Ensuring that you appreciate your employees' efforts and contributions and call out where things have been done well. A really key one is getting to know your employees, what they do and who they are. This will really help you in terms of spotting when things go wrong or potentially things go wrong. Helping ensure that work is organised efficiently and effectively and that people understand what their role is. People like clear, defined boundaries with that autonomy, but you as managers have that ultimate responsibility for the boundaries that they work within. Trying as much as possible to be realistic about workloads and deadlines. Being proactive in anticipating stressful periods. So if you as a business know when your peak time is, or when you've got a particular part of the year that you know is going to be busier compared to the rest of it, plan in advance. How can you support your employees in getting through that period and coming out the other side? Every business will have that, and every business will have them that they didn't know was coming, whether it's due to lack of resource, work that appeared that you weren't anticipating. And it's really thinking about how you react to that and manage that. So trying to be proactive in anticipating it, but then standing back after you've been through them and making sure employees know they've been appreciated is really important. And then in general, managing change effectively. As I said before, this can be a key driver in mental health when you're going through a large change, and it's important to recognise that. Moving on then to actually supporting employees, and talking here in general about supporting employees, but particularly important when you have recognised that somebody has a mental health issue, or somebody has come to you and been open and honest that they have a mental health issue. In general, establishing open and honest communication with employees is absolutely key. If you can get an early intervention into a mental health issue, this really can help prevent problems from escalating. I think it's important to focus on the person, not the problem. Your role is a supportive role and a listening role. It's key to remember, as I said earlier, that although you need to take control of the situation as a manager or a business leader, you are not suddenly expected to become a medical expert who has the answer to all their problems. You won't have the answer to all their problems, and that's why it's important to focus on the person. In general, taking a positive approach and making sure that you've created an environment within your workforce where being open and honest about mental health issues becomes the norm. It can be very difficult. It is a difficult subject to talk about, but the more that we do talk about it, the easier it will become. It's fine to flip the question round on the person. Don't think you have to have all the answers. Ask them for what support they think they need, and they may be able to tell you. They might not, and we'll quickly go into some other ways that you can help them. But ask them what they would like to see from you, and then see if there are things that you can do to help them. If all else fails and you haven't been able to find a solution informally between yourself and your employee, then it's working to find a solution, seeking advice from other people, whether that be from your peers within your business, whether it be from HR, whether that's internal or external, and looking at all the other areas that you can find help, whether that be from occupational health or from other external resource. And this is where I'd like then to talk a little bit more about how Moorepay support their customers. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're very conscious that smaller businesses aren't afforded the luxuries that larger corporate organisations are, and it can be very difficult to know where to go for the right support. And we've very much changed our focus over the last 12 months to try and think about not only how do we pay people correctly and on time and ensure that businesses stay on the right side of the law when dealing with issues, we've started to think about how we can help businesses get the most out of their staff in the most effective and productive way by promoting general employee wellbeing. And these are just some of the areas that we have introduced over the last few months. So we've introduced a benefits package which can sit alongside our existing offering. We have partnered with a benefits provider which will allow you to bring some flexible benefits to your staff, whether that be health cash plans, discounts, cycle to work vouchers, and this all contributes to helping create and promote employee wellbeing that sits beyond the job they do and the salary they get. Sitting alongside that, we partner with an employee assistance program, which allows employees access to a 24/7 confidential helpline, which can help them with anything from financial issues to legal issues with landlords, to supporting them if they have mental health issues, or even down to positive situations. It could be an employee is moving areas to take up your job and doesn't know where to send their children to school, or where to send them to a nursery or a childminder. And EAPs can even go as far as helping provide Ofsted reports for all those childcare facilities in the area, helping them find out where their local children's groups are. So it can also be a really positive, proactive thing as well. We also now partner with an occupational health provider, which I'll talk shortly in a little bit more detail, and we are extremely proud to partner with Able Futures, which is a government funded programme, and again I will touch on that in a moment. We also are able to provide analytics on absence trends to help businesses see if they've got a problem, where that problem is, and potentially anticipate it. We run mental health training for managers, specifically aimed at the basis of what I've gone through today, but in a full day course and a lot more detail. And then we provide full case management support for employee issues related to mental health. So just to finish off then, I wanted to talk in a little bit more detail about two of the areas that we're particularly proud of and feel are very important to supporting the businesses that are our customers. We now have an occupational health provider, and we partner with a company called Honeydew. So occupational health professionals will find out what impact work has on staff health and make sure that they're fit to undertake the role. And through this, you will benefit from things like being able to coordinate and manage the whole occupational referral process, coordinate necessary annual medicals, review occupational health referral reports, and get advice and guidance on next step. But thinking about it in terms of mental health, it is really key that early on, if you see the signs of someone who either appears to have mental health problems or have come to you and told you they have mental health problems, as well as trying to figure out between the two of you what support you can give, referring them to occupational health will give you a medical lens on it. They will tell you what the condition is, what impact it's likely to have, and then how work may be able to support them. And having that report alongside the Moorepay advisors can be a really powerful tool in helping you manage your employees and get that early intervention, which is critical. So we're really proud to be partnering with Honeydew on occupational health. And then the other area that I mentioned we were really proud to be able to partner with is Able Futures. So Able Futures are a government funded initiative that has only launched within the last 6 or 8 months. And it is all about helping people with severe mental health issues stay in work. A lot of the time, mental health support for employees often starts once it's serious enough that they've gone off ill and are absent. This is all about helping to keep them in work in the first place. And we can help you demonstrate your commitment to supporting your employees with mental health conditions in the workplace through Able Futures. So Able Futures, there is no charge for using this service. They can provide advice for employers, but it is mainly employee driven. So your employee is able to access the online portal of information, get free resource and toolkits. But more importantly, when they phone the confidential helpline, they will be assessed by a trained counsellor and will be assigned a face-to-face consultant in their local area who will work with them on a 9-month period to help them remain in work. And this is something that we're really proud to be partnering with, and we are promoting this to all our businesses and customers that we work with. And it's particularly useful where you have got the more severe cases of mental health. And it's just about pulling all these different strings together and all these different resources and helping you. So that's the end of the formal presentation. I hope you've managed to find it useful and has given you a snapshot on some areas to think about. We've probably got time for a few questions now, so I will let Hannah pull them up and we will try and get through some of them.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So please do keep dropping your questions into the question panel and we will work through some of them now. If we don't get a chance to go through all of the questions, we will come back to anyone whose question isn't addressed after the webinar, so don't worry about that. Right, let's have a quick look. So the first question is from Matthew, and he's asked, what advice would you give on starting a conversation about mental health with an employee?
Okay, this can probably be one of the most scariest things to do, which is actually start that conversation, especially if they've not offered the information first, if it's you've spotted one of those signs we talked about before. The best advice that I can give is to be open and honest and to face the problem. Ignoring the problem isn't going to make it any better. So it's important to take that initial leap on having that conversation. The best advice, again, that can be given in terms of having that conversation is to ask open questions and to make sure that you are listening to them. This is about them talking to you, not you talking to them. I think it would only show a caring employer who has pulled one of their employees to one side to ask them, are they okay? Is there anything that they want to talk about? Is there anything that we can do to help you? And it's just being brave enough to start that conversation, asking open questions and being very open and honest in your concerns for them. And I don't think you should shy away from that.
Thank you, Michelle. Right, let's have a quick look. So we've also got a question from Holly. Holly's asked, what should I do if it's clear an employee has a mental health issue but won't talk about it or refuses to take on suggestions that I've made?
Yeah, this is a really difficult one and can sometimes tip into the area where you need a bit more specialist advice from HR or legal professionals. The time that it becomes a problem is when it starts to impact their ability to do their job, or they're actually taking a significant amount of time off work because of that. If that is the case, then you would need to move more towards thinking about how you would manage it from a medical capability point of view. There is only so much you can do, and one thing that I would say to managers is, even though that you have a responsibility, don't feel that you shoulder the entire burden of it. Keep that open conversation, keep asking people if they are okay, if you can help, but there will only be so much you can do. But if you've got someone who's been like that and it starts to impact their job or they're absent, then it would be time to seek more specific advice either from HR or a legal expert on how you manage that process.
Thank you, Michelle. We've also had a number of questions around absence. Mike asked, what can you do when an employee is absent due to a mental health issue? And Brahmin has also asked about advice on dealing with frequent short-term absences due to anxiety or depression when the job is based on site, so it's not the option for home working, for example.
Okay, yeah, I mean, absence can fall into two categories. It can either be a long-term absence that someone is off for, that their bout of depression or severe anxiety has led to weeks or months off work, or it can manifest itself in short-term frequent absence. I think the first thing is that we would generally advise with short-term frequent absence that if it is for an underlying issue like mental health, that you would not follow your normal short-term trigger process. So if you have a process following short-term triggers that may result in a dismissal, if it is for something like mental health, which is considered an underlying condition and maybe a disability, that you wouldn't follow that normal process. Both of those then, long-term and short-term, would more fall into a medical capability process. So if you have a medical capability process policy within your organisation, it would start to be following that and seek advice from HR or legal counsel, but it would be looking at ways that you can support them. Can you change part of their job? Can you change their hours? Are there lots of things that you can change? And this is where something like occupational health can have a real impact, because you are able to ask a medical professional who has an occupational health slant or view on things, asking them what options there are. You don't have to follow the advice, but they give you advice, and that is often very powerful.
Thank you, Michelle. We've also received a question from Anna, who has asked, what should I do as a HR professional if I hear from someone in confidence that another individual has some mental health issues, other than asking if the individual is okay? Is there anything more that I could do?
Well, I think you've got the first port of call there, which is talking to the individual, and whether that's you talking to the individual or you think the manager's the best person, that may just come down to who you think's best in that situation. That should be your first port of call, asking them, are they okay? Is there anything that we can do to support? And again, being honest with them that you have some concerns and you are there to support and help them. And then I think the main thing that you could do then is just make sure that they are kind of monitored, and you look, and their manager, who will be with them on a more regular basis, make sure that they're looking out for the signs that we talked about earlier, and keeping on top of it. Having regular open dialogue with your employees and getting to know them will make those conversations a lot easier and a lot more likely to be successful.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for answering all of those questions. We'll have to close the questions off there. If your question hasn't been answered, we'll contact you after the webinar, and we will also be circulating the copy of the slides and also a link to the recording as well, so that you can share it with any colleagues and you've got a record of the slides as well to refer back to. In terms of other resources that are available to you, if you do visit our website or connect with us on social media, there's a whole host of resources. There's HR and legislation guides, there's payroll guides, and if you follow us on LinkedIn, we'll push these out for our social sites, so you'll see them flash up on your news feed. I hope that you found the webinar useful today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to Michelle for hosting the webinar and for answering your questions. We'll close the webinar now. I hope you have a lovely day, and we'll follow up with the slides and recording as soon as they are available. Thank you very much.